Hi, I'm Lee Ferris with the Cambridge Residents Alliance. And the Cambridge Residents Alliance is a all-volunteer group in Cambridge that's focusing a lot on, well, our tagline is that we're trying to make Cambridge livable, affordable, and diverse. And all of those are under threat because of rising housing costs. We mostly deal with local issues, so I worked hard to come up with state level stuff to talk about for today's 6 minutes that I get, but I'm not claiming that this is comprehensive and that this is the list to all end list, but it's a place to start. And I operate from the point of view that housing should be a human right. How many of you here agree with that? Yeah. Oh, that's so great to see. But even though we think it's a human right, our government at the state level and the federal level doesn't fund it like it's a human right. So that's where I'm trying to go. And I think one of the biggest things at the state level that would affect all of this is probably people know that our tax structure in Massachusetts is highly regressive because everybody at every income level pays the same percent of their income. And so there is a proposal that is very slowly moving forward that you'll be able to see in the legislature, I don't know, maybe in a year or two, called the millionaire's tax, and that would enable there to be a higher tax rate for the very richest people, and that money could go to all of the things that we're talking about today. So I just want to mention that as an overarching thing. And then I borrowed some from Mike Connolly's Housing for All proposals, so some of these are covered there. One is his proposal to finance an emergency supplemental affordable housing bond bill. So the state did pass a large 1.8 billion housing bond bill in this year's budget, I think. But Mike's proposal, which is supported by other legislators, is to do a different additional bond bill for a whole nother $1 billion. And that would include money for preserving existing units of affordable housing that are, quote, expiring, meaning that their affordable housing subsidy is going to go away, and we would actually lose units of affordable housing, which is a really scary idea. And the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston said that we would need billions, our state would need billions of dollars just to preserve those units. And Mike's bond bill, affordable housing bond bill, would also provide $250,000 to municipal public housing authorities so that they could do the maintenance that he was talking about not being done. And in addition to what Mike said about the mass rental voucher program, I just want to say that we can't, at the local level, we can't change how much the federal government allocates for so-called Section 8 housing vouchers, but Massachusetts has really needs to step up to the plate more with our own state level housing vouchers, MRVP, like Mike was talking about, because that's money that we do control. And while there were increases in the state budget this year, they weren't nearly enough. And then Mike's also pointed out that there is no new federal or state public housing being built anywhere in the Commonwealth, or in the country generally. And instead, any new construction of affordable housing is mostly done by nonprofits and sometimes for-profits. So think about what would it mean if we had new publicly owned affordable housing. Because when you do that, then you can say what income levels it's good for. Whereas when you're talking about the federally funded housing, you have to go with whatever programs and income levels the federal government is putting out. So it's sort of the same thing as, you know, we need to, where the federal government is not stepping forward, we, Massachusetts, need to step forward. There were funds for the Community Preservation Act that were increased this year, but right now it's only matching that funding. The state matches only 30%. I think we should do a 1-to-1 match. So if the local government raises $1, the state gives $1 for them to spend on affordable housing and open space and so forth. And then we do have a housing emergency, so we need to think about passing the act to facilitate housing for all, and that's a plan by Mike to think about raising hundreds of millions of dollars in new revenue through a tax on, a small tax, state tax on large businesses, and it could raise billions a year that could be allocated to housing. And then lastly, there's a need to fund a couple of important bills that have not yet passed. One is the tenant's right to purchase, which would enable tenants that are in a building that's getting sold to pair up with nonprofit housing developers to buy that unit instead of having it being sold for the maximum profit and them getting rent increases and thrown out. And if that bill is going to pass, to make it work, we're going to need money. And lastly is the same thing with the right to counsel, where we're saying that every tenant that goes to housing court for eviction should have access to a lawyer. Well, that's going to take money too to fund lawyers. So those are things that are on the horizon. Thank you.